Hello, I'm Alex Kernan, a former Special Operations Sniper and firearms instructor, here to bring you the tools required to make you and your loved ones safer in the home, your vehicle, or while in town or at work. I do this by leveraging my years of experience in both the technical and tactical realm. Now, our home here in the United States is not a war-torn battlefield, but with the correct insight, you can see how the tactical survivor mindset required to thrive over there applies to any and all situations here at the home, be it an earthquake, a hurricane, fire, or even an active shooter scenario. I can teach and hone your skills in adaptive reasoning, emergency planning, and provide a level of tactical proficiency that is not only unmatched, but geared directly towards how to protect yourself and the ones you love inside your home and abroad. Teaming up with Atlanta Range and Ordnance in Newnan, Georgia, you now have access to the highest level of training, which you'll hear more about at the end of this seminar. Now, it was always my intent to offer this seminar free of charge because it's the first stepping stone down a path of tactical knowledge and skill proficiency. Originally designed to be done in person to large groups, I recognized it is far more efficient to offer it in this form, where you can access it according to your availability and rewatch it at your convenience. Truthfully though, I would have preferred doing this in person, because this video platform loses a key component to active learning. It doesn't have that dynamic back and forth, question, answers, and discussion between us that is wildly conducive to learning. So should you have any questions about the things discussed here, please leave them in the comments below and I will get back to you in a timely manner. In this seminar, you are going to learn specific things you can immediately implement in your daily life, which will decrease the chance of falling victim to crime. Then, we will talk about how to prepare for any and all of life's dangerous scenarios by applying sound methodology and understanding what is required for a good plan of action. Now, without further ado, this is your Don't Be a Victim Personal Security Seminar. Situational awareness is a key concept in the fight to increase your personal security, and you must be able to define what it means to be situationally aware. Please go ahead, pause the video, and think to yourself what it means to be situationally aware. Think broadly. You probably came up with a couple different things, and they're probably not wrong. I find the usual answer among my students is that situational awareness is a looking around you and seeing what everyone is doing. And though this isn't necessarily wrong, it's far too situationally specific to be useful. So, more generally, situational awareness can be defined as knowing your vulnerabilities and being able to assess when they're threatened. I'll say it again. Situational awareness is the knowing of your vulnerabilities and being able to assess when they are threatened. Write that down and let it sink in. I want to point out right now that this is a data skill pair. Knowing your vulnerabilities is data, and assessing when threatened is a skill. Not to get ahead of myself here, but you will see and hear this data skill pair a lot over the course of the seminar. And that's because this data skill pair is the fundamental building blocks to any plan of action. In the later half of this seminar, you will see that even an elaborate plan is nothing more than one or many of these data skill pairs put together in a logical way. My point is this. As you enhance your situational awareness, you will also begin planning what to do when your vulnerabilities are threatened. Therefore, we utilize situational awareness as an initialization tool. I'll use an analogy to make this clear. An elaborate plan for a home invasion is akin to a firearm, with the plan details being all of its intricate components. Given this, our situational awareness is analogous to the trigger. It's a necessary part of the system, and it initiates the parts required to function. Put another way, your situational awareness is the call to action for an immediate life-saving response plan. So, we have said that personal security begins with situational awareness, which is the knowing of our vulnerabilities and the ability to assess when threatened. What is it that makes us vulnerable, though? That which makes us vulnerable to crime can be categorized in one of three ways. Those three ways are a knowledge deficit, predictability, and complacency. Let's address them in order. First, vulnerability due to a knowledge deficit. You cannot defend against what you don't know. Furthermore, you cannot utilize a skill if it isn't well trained. Examples are not limited to the active shooter environment where you train flawless room clearance techniques, but is also applicable to other life-threatening scenarios. An example, knowing to crawl during a fire because the smoke rises and builds up on the ceiling. If you didn't know that simple little fact, you could end up killed simply because you tried to run out of a building, inhaled a ton of smoke, and passed out. A knowledge deficit is readily fixed by being forward-thinking, proactive, and willing to actually develop the skills required. Too often, I see people with good intentions write down all the skills they want or need to protect themselves and their loved ones, but don't actually do any of them. Prioritize, make a plan to do, and learn that which you don't know. The old saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, is absolutely the truth. As for what skills you require, that'll be addressed when you decide what it is you're planning for in the second part of this seminar. The second facet which makes you vulnerable to crime is predictability. If you've been targeted, it is not advantageous to be on a well-set, well-defined schedule. As a former sniper, I can tell you every mission I planned was based on my target's predictability. It's simple enough to understand. If you're predictable and you've been targeted, it's a matter of time before the criminal-to-be chooses his or her moment to strike. And lastly, our own complacency makes us vulnerable. The top examples of this I see is someone sitting on the couch with all the tactical proficiency as would be expected of an elite military operator, hearing a loud noise outside, but throwing caution to the wind by thinking it's probably nothing, and just sitting there. Our mind naturally wishes to avoid a dangerous situation, and the result is often that we try to convince ourselves that the noise was inconsequential. Now, it probably wasn't anything of consequence, but of course it could be, and blowing it off might just cost you your life or the life of your loved ones. Complacency is also prevalent in those who are avid firearms collectors or tactical enthusiasts. It isn't enough to watch a video or read a book and expect you're capable. It isn't enough to keep buying guns and ammunition and assume you can just do whatever it takes in a dynamic, time-is-life scenario. Practice your skills. Yes, it takes time. A good instructor stops wasted time and repetition while also allowing you to be safe, provide insight to the bigger picture, and assist in giving you options that fit your lifestyle. As an aside, and know that I recognize the first glance irony of what I'm about to say, but beware of YouTube experts. There's a ton of bad information out there, some of it even coming from former military or law enforcement. Also, I want you to recognize that just because someone is skilled at something doesn't necessarily make them a good instructor. Alright, let's tie up a couple of proverbial loose ends, which have arisen from our discussion on vulnerability. We've said that predictability could make us vulnerable. This is naturally assuming that we've already been targeted. So now we'll talk about crime opportunity theory. I once had one of my students suggest that predictability could not be a factor in a random crime event. I commend his attention to discussion, but let's examine the idea of a random crime event as the news media suggests they are. There are, in fact, very few random crimes. In fact, I can only think of one off the top of my head, and that would be a not very smart person firing a bullet into the air and it impacting someone miles away. Now, the news media suggests that random crime is a break-in and things like that. I'm telling you it's not. In this instance, there's nothing the victim could have done to prevent the bullet from hitting him. So I submit to you, random crime only exists in the situation where the victim couldn't have known, observed, or reacted to the situation before it occurred. This leads us right to crime opportunity theory. Crime opportunity theory is the prevailing psychological theory that would-be criminals weigh their actions on a risk versus reward scale. The ultimate goal, the perfect crime, is a very low-risk crime with a very high reward. To paint a small picture, imagine you park in a dark parking garage with your windows rolled down and a large sum of money sitting on the seat. Would you expect that money to be there on the seat when you get back? Of course not. The risk versus reward ratio is greatly in favor of the criminal. Taking the same situation, but instead park in a well-lit area of the parking garage next to the security camera, blue emergency response button, with the windows rolled up and an alarm system on your vehicle. Now this may not stop the criminal, but the ratio of risk to reward is now much more in our favor. Anything you can do to increase the risk and lessen the reward will decrease your chance of being targeted. This is the fundamental idea we will use as we discuss things you can do immediately in your home, in your vehicle, and in town or around work that will make you less susceptible to crime. Now is a good time to take a break if you need it, hit pause, grab a drink of water, and we'll continue when you're ready. Now we're ready to talk about actions you can take to be less susceptible to crime. Some of these tips aid in increasing our situational awareness, while others are simply best practices designed to put the risk-reward ratio in our favor. We'll talk about the home, the vehicle, then abroad, in that order, so let's dive into it. Always keep your doors and windows locked. It is advised to always keep your doors and windows locked even if you're at home. This is a best practice designed to put the risk versus reward ratio in our favor. This point may seem too obvious, but allow me to impress upon you how rare it is for people to keep all of the doors and windows locked while they're at home. A couple of years ago, I performed a random 3-question survey where I asked 100 people if they keep their doors locked while away from home, while at home, and if they have a military or law enforcement background. Not surprisingly, everyone said that they lock their doors when leaving, though some admitted to forgetting on occasion. What I found interesting, and my purpose behind the little study, was to find that only 32% of the participants felt they needed to keep the doors locked while at home. Of note was that 25 out of that 32% had a military or law enforcement background. This shows us that those who understand and live in high-stress, dynamic professions recognize the vulnerabilities are greatest where we are comfortable. The next at-home tip is to leave the lights on and blinds closed while away. This is another best practice that also puts the risk versus reward ratio back in our favor. We're stressing the opportunistic criminal mind to gamble that no one is at home. It's a simple and effective barrier to entry. Now on the market are affordable LED lights which fit your standard receptacle and last for approximately 50,000 hours. The lifespan is important here because you can reliably assume that the lights won't burn out and leave the crime countermeasure unavailable. Furthermore, data is our friend. If the lights are not on when you get home, be prepared to find someone turn them off. When arriving home to a locked door, keep your house key in the ready. Lingering unnecessarily outside your house, especially when you haven't been home to perceive the general ongoings, makes you extremely vulnerable. Suppose for a moment you have been targeted. If the soon-to-be criminal feels it's necessary to get at you as well as your home, he or she may be lingering nearby until you arrive. If you're standing there fumbling with your keys, you are both distracted from your surroundings, as well as providing the time they require to rush you. Alternatively, by having your house key in the ready, you lessen the distraction of searching for the key, as well as minimize the time outside your door. Additionally, it's often that your homecoming is predictable routine, and as we've already learned, that alone puts us at a tactical disadvantage. Minimize the time outside, minimize the vulnerability. My next tip for the home is to enjoy the little things, like Pomeranians. A big aggressive dog can be a deterrent of crime as well as a huge liability. But what if I were to say that little dogs, like the Pomeranian, could be orders of magnitude more dangerous than even a Rottweiler? Would you believe me? The little dog may not have a bite or bark that actually stops an intruder, but it is the most effective alarm system available, as well as generally territorial. It's the most dangerous, Because rather than trying to handle an intruder, it barks, which brings me to the fight with all my resources, knowledge, experience, and training. I can promise you this: my bite is orders of magnitude greater than any pack of dogs. What's more is I can make you just as effective. Now, I'm suggesting to have small breeds like a Pomeranian as an addition to your home security plan. By all means, have a large breed too. Have 2 large breeds. It's all adding to the idea of a layered defense. I often equate a vehicle to being a coffin with wheels. In any time-is-life scenario, in principle, you are more likely to survive where you can move dynamically in unpredictable patterns. The intent of maneuver is to gain the upper hand. A vehicle is the direct opposite of this. Quite seriously, can you imagine anywhere you're less dynamic? A vehicle keeps you strapped in while forcing you to adhere to the rules of the road, which everyone knows. You are generally very predictable and therefore vulnerable. The first tip I have for you in your vehicle is to take different routes to and from your common destinations. Whether it be going to or coming from home or work, church, yoga class, golfing, whatever. This will help ensure you don't get followed by someone with a specific agenda, and has the added benefit of increasing your mental divergence, as well as making you more resourceful should you pick up a tail. Sitting, napping, or even eating lunch in your vehicle is a dangerous endeavor that greatly elevates your risk to crime. This goes back to the lack of dynamics and predictability while in your vehicle, and effectively puts the risk-reward ratio in favor of the opportunistic criminal. If you must be stationary in your vehicle, be vigilant and have a plan. Most importantly, and if you don't learn anything else from me today, remove the cute little family stickers from the back of your vehicles. The word is operational security, which some of our veterans watching may recall the military called OPSEC. I talk at length about this and how to maintain operational security in my full situational awareness course. Here, we'll just stick to the basics. Data is our friend, and we want as much of it as possible, while also giving nothing away. So let's do a little exercise. On the screen, you now see an example of one of these family stickers I'm talking about. This little sticker provides a wealth of information that, if I was a criminal, I would certainly abuse. It is a safe assumption that the wife made the sticker and that it's on her vehicle. Just a cursory glance tells me it's probably a middle-income family. Dad is probably working a routine 9-to-5 business schedule, and if the nearest city is an hour away, he probably leaves the house about 6:30 a.m. and returns about 7 p.m. The mother has shown us, simply by choosing the sticker for herself, that she enjoys the luxury of nice things. Furthermore, we can expect her to be busy taking care of the baby, running errands, and taking the teenager to school or the sports. The fact that the teenager is playing some kind of sport would suggest other engagements are frequent. The headphones puts the teenager in the 12 to 15-year-old age range. We see that the grandma on the side with the cane suggests limited mobility, and the fact that she's included suggests she may even be living in the house with them. Also, the dog is a Chihuahua, a little dog known to be very territorial and yippy. If I was the criminal, I would break into their home at approximately 8:15 a.m. More specifically, after Dad has gone to work and 20 minutes after Mom took the girl to school, but soon enough after Mom leaves that, should Grandma be present in the house, she may just think Mom forgot something and turned around. It wouldn't be a silent entry because the dog will bark. But the bark will probably be disregarded until it's too late. I could keep going and analyze this even to placement of jewelry or weapons inside the home, but I think I've made my point clear. Lastly is a tip when you're out and about in your daily life. It relates very much to operational security, but pertains particularly when abroad. Under no circumstances should you post social media updates while the event is still going on. It is well established that most victims have met or intimately know the person that commits a crime against them. All of the security measures you could possibly take do nothing if you declare exactly where you are and what you're doing. I will utilize golfing as an example. A picture with the caption saying, "Golfing with my buddies, par for hole number 3," is only inviting problems. It's broadcasting to the world that you have at least another 7 holes to go, that your home is guaranteed to have at least one less person in it, approximately how long you will be there, and if you're being targeted personally, where they can find you. It's just all bad. Nothing good will ever come from this. An alternative is to wait until the event is over. You don't necessarily have to be at your home. You simply need to omit your current whereabouts and your timeline. To continue the example, a better alternative to the scenario above is a couple hours after you finish the round of golf. Go ahead and post a social media update. A good golf game with the buddies earlier, par for hole number 3. The same information you intended to share is now out to your friends and family, except now, anyone reading it doesn't know your whereabouts or your projected timeline. Now is about the time in my full situational awareness course, after we have started exploring explicit actions to take, that my students start playing the what if game. They start analyzing each situation and say, well, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? What do I do? This is great, because this is the next crucial step in your personal protection plan. By now we should have started seeing the world in a little different light, and our tactical survivor mindset is beginning to take shape. Don't ignore it. This mindset can be trained to not be invasive of your daily life, but it can fuse with your daily consciousness and be as easy as breathing. As I said a moment ago, the what-if game is necessary in your personal protection plan, and earlier still, we learned that all plans are comprised of data skill pairs. We are nearly ready to see how and why the what-if game is the start of our protection planning process. But first, we must understand a little bit about our decision-making theory and process. The OODA loop is an acronym which describes our mind's fundamental decision-making methodology. OODA stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. It's a loop because as we end each cycle, we act, and then must return to step 1, the observation, to see if the action had any effect. From there we continue the process. This is not something special to emergency preparedness or time is life scenarios, but it's just the way we humans operate. You couldn't stop it if you wanted to. So why should we care? Because forward thinking and development of a good plan for a given scenario short-circuits the OODA loop, saving you valuable time and greatly reducing the chance you'll freeze under pressure. If ever someone freezes under pressure, it's because they are stuck in an OODA loop where their mind doesn't know how to process the data input. More clearly, if you freeze under pressure, your mind is stuck trying to orient itself, step number 2, and then deciding what to do, step number 3. A good plan that is regularly practiced to an exacting degree circumvents this decision-making process. In the military, it's called a battle drill. This is my Ranger Handbook. It's the only book I've ever been forced to carry everywhere with me as a member of the regiment. And it defines a battle drill as a collective action rapidly executed without applying a deliberate decision-making process. Now, if that sounds like the definition of a trained reflex, well, that's because it is. I tell all of my tactical students that unless you're the bad guy, you're going to be showing up to the gunfight late. In a scenario where fractions of a second could be the difference between life or death, you need a couple of things. A good plan, be able to execute it rapidly and efficiently without the need of a complete OODA loop, and you have to execute it as flawlessly as possible. It is a daunting prospect, but that is where an understanding of personal protection planning comes in, as well as a good instructor to show you the way. Our seminar is nearly complete, so now we need to wrap up everything we've discussed in a nice, neat little package. We can now start to recognize what makes us vulnerable in our daily life, be it a natural or man-made situation, such as fire, active shooter scenarios, or even bomb threats. We know that we increase our survivability and lessen the risk of becoming victims by assessing our vulnerabilities and taking precautions, and that a plan is necessary to make the right decision as quickly as possible. Now, it's always overwhelming when you first sit down to actually develop you and your family's personal protection plan. Everyone's first step is to write down what they are preparing for, but then they get stuck for a lack of data and/or skills. They then become overwhelmed and then depressed. Additionally, even when someone bypasses this feeling of being overwhelmed, they often get stuck worrying if they forgot a crucial detail. In my emergency planning course, I teach how to prepare for any event in a thorough and concise manner, which is an extensive exercise in data acquisition and dynamic situation management. But to help you in the here and now, what you need to know and accept is this. All plans are made of data and skill pairs. Develop them from specific to general. Know that the best plan works in multiple situations, and usually the best plan is going to be the simplest one. Additionally, the number one error I see people make all the time is that they rely exclusively on their plan. Relying on plans leads to failure. Now, I didn't say planning leads to failure. I said relying on plans leads to failure. You need to accept that plans are a necessary component of personal security. And like your situational awareness triggers a particular action, a plan can go out the window the second something changes. The idea is this. Plan the fight, don't fight the plan. Even if your opponent is a natural disaster, you must be willing to adapt. If all of your scheming goes out the window, use the skills you have trained and developed to effectively communicate and act dynamically. Throughout this seminar, I have briefly mentioned some of my other courses, which are currently being offered at and through Atlanta Range and Ordnance in Newnan, Georgia. What I offer in these courses isn't just firearms tactics and explicit information, but also a key element necessary to keep you safe, your loved ones safe, and make you an asset to your community. And that is, I can teach you to start thinking dynamically. I can teach you to think your way out of any situation. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. Either you control the chaos of a bad situation, or it controls you. And if it's the latter, you likely won't survive. I'm Alex Kernan. Rangers lead the way.